Everyone, and welcome to Criminal Justice Commission. I'd like to call it meeting to order, please.
Commissioners Brown,
Present.
Fuller,
Present.
Harris, Herr,
Present.
Mercy,
Present.
Vice Chair Rodriguez,
Here.
Chairman Little.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Invocation. Josh DeVore from Grace Chapel, please. Will everyone stand, please?
Lord, thank you so much for blessing us with a city. Thank you for giving us life and a purpose. And I just pray for our leadership today. I pray that you give them wisdom and that they would lead us well, but also that we would support them well. You are true and you are just, and we love you and we trust you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Flag salute, please.
Please join me in our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presentation. Sexual assault awareness presenter Andrew Perry. Perry.
Apparently he's running behind, sir.
Okay.
Maybe when he arrives, then we can move forward with this presentation.
We have no cards on any agenda items. Okay, let's get into consent calendar. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of March 13th, 2019 meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
We have
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor? We good? All in favor? We all voted?
Yeah, it's not working anymore.
It's not projecting.
That's okay. Well, we can ask the, we're good?
Yeah, it's passed.
Pass? Unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Staff presentation and update reports. Sheriff's Department.
Oh, it's right here. Found it. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So today I'm presenting the February stats, even though it's April. This year is just flying by today, or this year. So for our crime commission, we are, for the month of February, we were a little busy, but it was a great month. We'll start with our burglaries. We had a total of 55 burglaries in February. Residential, we had 31. Commercial, we had 24. For our robberies, we had a total of 30. 14 were armed and 16 were strong-armed. For our crime prevention, we have our social media, neighborhood watch meetings, and our business before breakfast. For our community engagement, we had a monthly coffee with the deputy at Crazy Autos. We celebrated Floridana's opening on the boulevard. We went to a night to shine. Our deputies were invited by a local church to this event with our special needs kids, where the special needs kids met our deputies, and they had a good time to recognize the uniform. So it's a Tim Tebow organization that puts this on. So Antelope Valley was the first city to actually get it over here. So they were really excited to show up and participate. We had our town hall meeting at AVPH in February. It was a great turnout. Our CAC committee members presented the DOJ report to our community members. We had our special edition coffee with the deputy at Starbucks. Starbucks over on 10th West and Avenue K. It was a great turnout. We were trying to get our evening commuters to come, and usually our coffee with a deputy is during the day, but we're trying to get our people that come home from work to come and join us and just have a conversation with us and get to know our deputies. So it was a great turnout. That was the first time we've had anything with Starbucks, actually. And the next one that I have is the ComStat. So our homicides for the month for February, we only had one homicide in February, which is our average, and that homicide is still being investigated. Our homicide detectives are working on some leads, but they still haven't put that person, been able to catch that person and put him in custody. Our rapes are down 4 for the month of February. And once again, our robberies are at 30. So it's a slight increase from 26 is our average. For our aggravated assaults, at 69, 69. Our domestic violence is at our average of 11. So Mr. Howard asked last week as far as the domestic violence and the aggravated assault, those two slides, they are separated because the domestic violence ones is the aggravated assault is between a husband and wife or a dating relationship. So that is why there's two different slides on that one. But we are at our average for domestic violence. Our burglaries are down to 55. Same thing with our larcenies. We're at a big drop in larcenies to 120. Our GTAs are down. Our detectives, the two detectives that work in our detective bureau at the station, they are doing a great job in keeping those numbers down. As soon as they see some sort of activity, they try and investigate it quickly and keep those numbers down. So in the month of February, we're looking good for February. For our arsons, we did get a little spike in the arsons for the month of February and January, and that's because some of those are homeless. They're like hot warming camps, and so accidentally catch something on fire or a bush on fire, or it causes damage to something. But it's not. We don't have like a serial arsonist out there, but that's where our arsons are coming from. And this is our hotspot area, once again for the same, for our Part 1 crimes. And again, it's near the shopping centers is where we see most of our activity. Any questions on the numbers?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about grand theft and the decrease there, and about they were receiving extra attention. See a pretty dramatic decline in burglaries and larcenies. Can you explain why you think that is?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit, sir. Burglaries, our folks that work our burglaries, they've always been very proactive. And what they do is they get on things right away. If they come in the morning, they'll pull the stats for burglaries the day before, so they can start actually working these things even before the report's there. So it's really just hard work, getting on it right away, and getting out there and following up on any witness that might be in the area, doing a little more canvassing, looking for video. They're very successful that way. And our folks that work the burglaries, they have a very good knowledge of who our pattern burglars are, or who our repeat customers are, so to speak. And they're so adept at dealing with these folks that if they get video, they're very likely to recognize these folks off the video. And it's just been very successful that way. Larcenies are down. Combination of things. Every 2 weeks, our crime analyst sends out a heat map of the activity for every shift. So our sergeants can brief the deputies on every shift on what the activity is on their shift, what the activity is, what area on their shift specifically. And we're using our no-call cars to really target that. Lieutenant Morrow in the Detective Bureau, he's really working with our crime analysts to keep track of that. And then the city's IBM Watson project capitalizes on that also, and also brings in other data that necessarily wouldn't come up from our crime stats that we can incorporate to put all that together and try to drive those crimes down. And it's been very effective. If you look at our Part 1 crimes, they've been trending down overall for the most part, and it continues. Like I said, some of them dramatically. Looking at the preliminary numbers today, and these are preliminary numbers, they could change, but preliminary numbers as of today, rapes are down almost 36%, burglaries are down almost 36%, GTAs are down almost 10%, larcenies are down almost 6%, and it's really just trying to get as much data as we can, look at it effectively, and make sure we're deploying our resources in an effective manner. And the other big part of it is just the proactive and hard work of our deputies. We went to Risk Management Forum last week, where we have to look at a lot of our numbers over a various scope of things over a 3-year period. We compare our stats to the other stations within the division. Our arrests at the station count for over a third of the total arrests throughout North Patrol Division. Of 5 stations, we account for a third of it. The guys are very proactive, and they're out there. They're very invested in the community. Most of them live locally, and it's really their hard work. You can put a lot of stuff to it, but really you can't discount the hard work of the deputies who want to keep their community safe.
Yeah, I appreciate the thorough explanation, and it sounds like, it's been a lot of hard work. So we're seeing over the last few months a pretty dramatic decrease, really. Then is it safe to say that's just because we have some of these serial offenders that are now incarcerated off the streets? Or
I think that's part of it, because you can have one crew, a relatively small crew, who can affect a crime rate dramatically. And I know we've talked about it at one of the previous commission meetings, where we arrested a crew of individuals who were linked to a robbery at the Best Western on I, and then we linked them to a number of, I think, 15 or 17 car burglaries that we can link them to by LA Fitness and Valley Central Way, the shopping centers, and those were the ones we can link them to. And we got that crew in custody, and it made a dramatic dent, and then we've just been capitalizing on that.
Thank you.
And just to add on that too, the implementation of the citywide program with the sheriff boosters in cooperation with the city, putting out the Ring, doorbell program, and I'll be bringing some stats to you next month that has had a significant effect based on some of those impact areas. The other thing is we've really stepped up the administrative site program for larcenies. As of just in 1 month, we over 63 larceny admin sites that were issued out there with a deterrent, where people are coming in, usually juvenile related, and paying fines related to that. So hopefully curbing some of that activity that was taking place as well. So I think, and I'm glad that the captain brought up with the IBM Watson, as I gave you a brief glimpse of it last meeting, I'm going to give you a quarterly report that Mr. Cottle has put together with the staff that are heading up this program, that I'll release out to you as soon as that's at the end of this month. So you'll see where we're at on quarterly. But there's some amazing downtrends that are going on right now based on all of these things. Captain Weber and Lieutenant Fender reorganized the staffing at the station and look at this now weekly on how to readdress those resources out there based on trends that are occurring. And it's having significant impact. The deputies are working very hard out there. There's a lot of collaboration going on now with everybody throughout the whole judicial process now, with the DA's office, the public defender, the alternative sentencing court. There's a lot of positive things that are coming from all that joint effort.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Good. All right, let's move along. We're going to back up in our presenter here, and Mr. Oh, I'm sorry.
One more.
Yeah, you got one more.
Sir.
We have leaps. We have Leaps,
to
yeah,
us.
I'm sorry.
Although
We're
you
reporting
see,
toward
you'll probably be
deployment.
happy to sit down right now.
I know, right? Thanks, sir.
Sorry, Archie. Sorry, Archie. Yeah.
At least well, okay, go ahead. Here we go, sir. So during the month of February 2019, with numerous sorties lost due to inclement weather, LASD formally logged 21 leaps. Service calls supported tactical field operations. Leaps was dispatched 48 times, totaling 10.6 hours, and was airborne, providing strategic surveillance for 200.2 hours. Leaps provided airborne observations and support in the arrest of 5 suspects. Additional support of Lancaster patrol deputies and detectives included the surveillance of specific targeted locations. Detectives are able to obtain aerial imagery and data in the evidence-gathering stages of property crimes and crimes against persons investigations. There were 5 arrests, 4 fights and assaults, 1 burglary, robbery, 4 traffic stops, 6 other offenses, suspicious circumstances, and 1 person with a gun. On our next slide, 38% people, 8% property, 15% arrests and detentions, 23% vehicles, and 15% observations. In addition to providing a force multiplier in the LASD in support of criminal activity suppression and deterrence and search and rescue support, the LEAPS activity reported 99% of its revenue to the Lancaster community in the form of 1, salaries for pilots and system support staff, 2, ongoing support for business at Fox Field for frame air maintenance and the FAA compliance, avionics support and fuel, 3, ongoing support from local Lancaster businesses for purchasing and fabricating of LEAPS, components and system subsystems, and 4, local tax and fees. This is information underpinned by AeroView LLC's commitment to remain headquartered in Lancaster for 10 years. Tax and fees accounted for less than 1% of costs. The LEAPS also provides the city of Lancaster with tactical and strategic reconnaissance support for 1, civic functions and activities, 2, emergency first responders support, and 3, Department of Public Safety activities. Thank you. Any questions on the LEAPS? Thank you.
And if I may, just real quickly, Deputy Siegel went through the outreach stuff, and she talked about that Night to Remember Tim Tebow event. That's actually a prom for special needs kids. They come out and they have a prom. It was a really neat event in conjunction with the Tim Tebow Foundation. We'd never done before, but that was really neat. And currently, we just started our first Citizens Academy in all Spanish. We're having a Spanish-speaking Citizens Academy this cycle as outreach to the Spanish-speaking community. So those are exciting things going on right now that I know will get lost in the paperwork before we discuss March down the road.
Fantastic. That's great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Let's back it up. We have our presentation, sexual awareness presenter, Mr. Andrew Perry. There he is. Hi, Mr. Perry. How are you? Good.
Good morning, Commissioner and members of the Crime Commission. I was here a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago. My name is Andrew Perry. I'm Executive Director of Sexual Assault Awareness, a national training and psychotherapy agency based here in the Antelope Valley. So I do a lot of traveling, a lot of talking about some of the issues I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm here to talk about a program that supports the mission of both my agency and hopefully the mission of the Crime Commission in believing survivors when they report. When anyone is the victim of a crime like a home invasion or they're injured in a hit and run, robbed at gunpoint, the typical response is support, empathy, and compassion. It's not questions or an interrogation of what they did or didn't do to bring it on. If a friend of mine is held up at gunpoint, my response isn't, well, did you say no? Or were you clear that you didn't want to give them the money? If someone's house is robbed, I don't say, well, you had a lot of really nice goods sitting around and your front door is really tempting. Yet routinely, victims of sexualized violence are subject to questioning and doubts as though they were the criminal or brought their rape and sexual abuse upon themselves. You might remember the Steubenville case from just a few years ago, small town, football town, where a number of players carried a drunk girl from party to party, molesting her, taking videos and pictures of her, raping her. And I actually just last night drove down to Santa Monica to see the documentary about this case. It was just released a couple of weeks ago called Roll, Red, Roll. And one of my goals is to see if I can bring a screening of that here to the Antelope Valley. I've already reached out to the producers and gotten a response. It's a very powerful film, and it details a little bit of, actually details in depth, a little bit of what I'm going to talk about here. So in this case, the town rallied, but not around the girl, not around her family, but around the football players and around their families, and talking about this as a detriment to their lives, that these young boys' lives were destroyed, and rather than focusing on the victims' pain. And the talk was about them being destroyed, and not on the true physical, psychological, emotional destruction that happens to girls and women when they're raped and molested. And the story happens over and over and over again to the point that it's routine. Women are called sluts and whores for engaging in normal, healthy sexual behavior, and rapists and molesters are given a pass. Law enforcement routinely treats victims as though they are the criminal. And when I talk about this, I'm not specifically talking about the LA County sheriffs we have here, although we do have some significant problems. But I'm talking about law enforcement in general and historically. That they interrogate the victims and pay little attention to the potential suspects. In a time when we're pushing for enthusiastic yes to be the standard for sexual contact, girls are still having cases refused for not saying no in a way that the DA or a jury will recognize. Normal physical reactions that occur during sexualized violence are treated as evidence of consent. This is one of the things that I lecture on nationally when I do trauma-informed discussions with various groups. So the work I do as a psychotherapist and a trainer to address this isn't nearly enough. I'm sure you're all familiar with the stats. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 boys are subject to anything from sexual abuse to completed rapes in their lifetime. The vast majority of rape goes unreported, and when a woman does report, they are often shut down or not believed, especially when they know their perpetrator, which is the vast majority of sexual assault cases. We're talking incest cases, boyfriends, husbands, that kind of thing. And that's the majority of the cases we see. It's not the stranger jumping out from the bushes. That's kind of an old concept these days. Victims routinely face what are called credibility challenges, meaning that they're questioned or disbelieved on the circumstances of their rape, all the way from report and on into the courtroom. And most don't report for fear of not being heard and believed, and unreported rapes go as high as 80%. So what can we do about this? I'll start by believing is a national campaign started by End Violence Against Women International. It's a philosophy and it's a social awareness challenge to the community with a very simple message. When anyone tells us that they were a victim of sexualized violence, verbal, physical, harassment, abuse, or rape, we will listen to them and believe them. It's a systemic change in how we treat victims of sexualized violence. And despite all the social and media influence that would have us believe otherwise, victims of rape and sexual assault do not lie, and there's a lot of research and evidence backing that up. Several years ago, I was invited to present at the End Violence Against Women International Conference. It's a huge annual research symposium of forensic law enforcement specialists, judicial system representatives, therapists like myself, and advocates, all focused on learning from one another about how to address and support sex crime victims. After my talk, I attended another one about the Start by Believing program. I had heard about it, but I hadn't actually sat in on a conference about it. And I was impressed and overwhelmed by how simple and how powerful it is. I took the pledge that day, and I decided to bring it back home here to the AV. And bringing together the Antelope Valley Sexual Assault Response Team, the Forensics Unit at AV Hospital, and Department of Mental Health, we've partnered to create the Antelope Valley Start by Believing Coalition. We had a kickoff media campaign in November, and over 50 Antelope Valley health and mental health organizations gathered together to communally take the Start by Believing pledge. We had the support of local politicians, and hopefully this video will play without sound. It's centering on Katie Hill and her own struggle as a sexual assault survivor and joining us and taking the Start by Believing pledge. With her support, we were able to get some local news coverage on Channel 11. We had front page coverage with the Antelope Valley Press. I've had the opportunity to sit down with both Tom Lackey and Steve Wilk and have them take the pledge. And even some beginning discussion about possibly crafting some legislation to the state of California supporting the Start by Believing campaign. So we have a lot of beginning support to move this forward. And the Antelope Valley is now the largest California region that supports Start by Believing. Which is a huge success. There's a number of different, as progressive as California is, there's a number of different Start by Believing campaigns that have gone on over the years. The program started in 2011, but we're now the largest geographical region on the map. This is a graphic from the Start by Believing website. So if you were to go to startbybelieving.org and go to their map section, you'll see, you can click on the little red dot and see the Antelope Valley Coalition there. If you see those larger blue dots up here, here, those are Start by Believing states. Those are states that have declared themselves with the support of law enforcement, administration, politicians, community organizations, all gathering together to say our whole state believes in this and issuing training programs and so forth to support that. I would love to see a blue dot on the California map there. So we still have a lot of work to do with Start by Believing. We tell the citizens of the Antelope Valley that we take sex crimes seriously, that we care, and that we will provide the support needed to address them. Law enforcement departments that adopt Start by Believing have higher reporting rates, better information gathering, and improved prosecution rates because the shift in approach at every level of law enforcement, from the initial officer through the SVU unit all the way into the courtroom, helps law enforcement gather the evidence they need towards prosecution and helps victims feel safer and more comfortable in telling their story. And that's just a general truism about us. When we have a close friend or a confidant, we're much more likely to tell them details and pieces of our lives. If we feel like we're not going to be shamed or put down for something that happened to us or blamed for it, we're much more likely to talk about details, which gives law enforcement more evidence to be able to pursue prosecution. So some of this is very much common sense. We just don't do this as a society. I hear over and over again, I do a lot of training with law enforcement, not so much here, but across the country. And it's an ongoing source of frustration that victims don't come forward. And yet, ironically, when they do, they're often questioned and scrutinized as if they were the criminal. A community commitment to Start by Believing can change this. One of the things I do is train law enforcement, as I said, on changing the existing victim interview to one using trauma-informed methodology and an understanding of what happens to the brain when someone is traumatized. And there's a lot of good research out there that helps people understand why someone might freeze or not cry out or not fight during an assault. And with more understanding around that, it becomes much easier to convince a jury, and that's some of the work that I do as well. So our goal is to spread the message throughout city halls, law enforcement, the community at large. And with the help of the national organization, I've partnered with other Start by Believing coalitions in Southern California to carry the message throughout LA County. So there's another group down in L.A., and the woman who runs that, a woman named Varsha, is on the board of directors for End Violence Against Women International. Gerald Monahan, who is their chief law enforcement officer, I've had some direct contact with him, and he's been very supportive in the Antelope Valley campaign and how to make this happen. So with your help, we can make this happen here. Start by Believing is about listening to and centering survivors, but it's more than that. It's about providing trauma-informed education to law enforcement and the community to decrease stigma and shame that sexual assault victims are often subjected to. Too many women and men have the routine experience of feeling isolated and alone, afraid to talk to even their close friends and family for fear of being questioned about what they did to get themselves raped. And it sounds like something out of the 1940s or 50s, but in 2019, as people call it, this era of Me Too and Time's Up, this is still the standard, not believing, and a primary reason why most people won't talk about what happened to them. I'm asking that we be the change in this community and throughout the Antelope Valley. I'm talking to you here. I'm going to hopefully be talking to the city officials over at Palmdale soon. So I'd like us to take this pledge and join in ensuring that when anyone says they were sexually assaulted, they will be heard and believed. So thank you. The last time I was here, I gave you a sample proclamation. And so my hope, two things, I would love to do a photo with all of you today. I brought some Start by Believing placards, which I can issue and do a quick photo, which can go up on the Start by Believing website. And the other thing that I'm asking the commission to do is to carry this message forward to the city council so that the city will declare Lancaster a Start by Believing city. So, any questions?
Questions? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as, thank you, great information. I think we probably have to go through city council before we can do any type of photos or anything like that at this point in time, and we'd love to take it to the city council and make a recommendation that that you brought forward. But as far as the proclamation that you had brought forward in the last one for us to sign, I think everything has to go through the city council.
Yeah. Well, I brought that as a sample to bring to the city
correct.
so that they can see. And it's sample language, and you can certainly adapt it. You know, as
And you brought a copy of that with you today?
I did the last time. I
Okay,
don't
so
think I have a copy.
with Mr. Dorico, then he would have
I could
access to
forward
that.
a copy, certainly.
Yeah, that would be the appropriate path. So
Okay.
to greatly appreciate the information. It's always good to raise awareness.
All right. Just last week, we had a nice article in the AV Press about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I did bring copies of that today, which I can distribute if you'd like to see that. It talks about a little bit of what I talked about today and some of my other work.
And you mentioned some states that have already gone blue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For you to get to that point here, what do you have to do to finish this out? Is it just go from cities?
It's a coalition of state. I mean, you have to go up to the governor's office.
So you got your
the
work.
state coalition of police officers. California, I can't remember the name of the organization. The gentleman here might know, but there's a state coalition of law enforcement that's already a Start by Believing organization. They've already declared themselves that. And the gentleman I mentioned, Gerald Monahan, was the chief law enforcement officer, I believe, in Arizona, and Arizona was the first state to go Start by Believing. And so he was instrumental in that. And he has offered his support if we needed some, law enforcement, convincing or someone to come in from that world to be able to talk about this and why it's important and why this is really supported by the law enforcement community. We can do that.
Public.
Sometimes it can be a little bit less aggressive.
Public.
But,
Okay. All right.
sorry.
All right. Any other questions or anything for? And Lee, you'll have that information or whatever
Yes,
we can bring to.
I'll get that information forwarded to you. Also, on the theme of this month was Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we work with Vice Chair Rodriguez on putting some information out to the public, like we do every year as well. We did it through Cinemark. We've done some radio. We've done some different things out there to raise that awareness. So that is a focus. I will bring all that forward, that proclamation, and then based on whatever you decide as a commission, to move that forward to the city council.
Yeah, Lisa has some great information.
And
that she was
Mr.
just-
Derrico has been a great support. He's offered a spot, which I've accepted at the Poppy Festival, to be able to promote sexual assault awareness and be able to talk about this program. So thank you for that.
Okay. Good. Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you. Probation Department.
Good morning. How are you doing?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I'm Robert Spovin. I'm a supervisor for the AB 109 program here in the Antelope Valley. This will be valley-wide that we're going to speak about today. Eric couldn't be here today, so I got chosen. So good morning once again to everyone. A couple of things we want to talk about and share with all of you, those of you here and in the audience, is the Public Safety Realignment, which is also known as AB 109, Assembly Bill 109. So in the Antelope Valley, one of the great things that we're doing, in our opinion, is that, and statistics will show, we've instituted evidence-based practices. So we're trying different ideas and different functions that are different modules that are happening throughout the country and dealing with the sophistication of what we're going through. In other words, we're, as we know, we're not sending people to jail as once upon a time we did for many, many years, and so we're trying different tactics to convince them. So the way I look at it and the way I discuss it with the probation officers that work for me and with me is it's like an old car. You know, before we would do it mechanically with hands, manually, and now we're working with the chip, and that's kind of the thing we have with mental health. Different areas. We have different various caseloads, those that deal specifically with mental health, family violence, and things of that nature, narcotic drug use, and things of that nature. Ultra high risk, which were the criminogenic rates are really high, where obviously they're prone to go back into prison for multiple times. So it's not just a traditional probationer. And this all began back in 2011, for those in the audience who are not familiar with it. We're also encouraging people to join us we're having our first annual resource fair. The resource fair will be on May 22nd. I brought some flyers regarding it. We're trying to get different facility type things to come out, mental health, domestic violence, certain businesses to come out, some would have job opportunities. And please note that we're not asking an employer to hire 15 probationers that have maybe a long history, but they have a good work ethic and they want that section. They've proven it. You're going to get the best of the best that we have. So you might get one here for one employer, maybe one for another employer, but we're not going to ask one particular employer to hire 15 people. It'd be great if they could, but it's probably not the best idea. But we're trying to spread them around so we can get them opportunities. And again, working with the chip and trying to get their mindset to change their way of thinking and giving up. Please note that when we have someone to report to probation, if we don't make that path pretty simple, there's a very good chance they're not going to show up and they're going to end up being right back what they know best. Fall back into the trap of, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go get high, and then it's going to lead to maybe another crime and another victim, of course. So we're trying to. So that will be on May 22nd. We have about 30 vendors so far that are going to come out, anywhere from hygienic to helping them get things situated, California driver's license, ID cards, things that make their path a little simpler so they can really believe that they have an opportunity to turn the corner into a different way and maybe lead to a different path of success. And again, we do have victims we have a victims group, a women's program where 2 or 3 of our probation officers talk about their trauma. They talk about, and where the women come in and they're victims, even though they're on probation, they've shown that part of their history is because they were victims in sexual assault, domestic family violence, those type of things. We began weeknight visits, weeknight testing to increase the odds of people showing up. We do have a good percentage of our probationers that do and are employed and do work. So we've made it a little easier so we can keep them on the positive lane of testing and keeping them kind of in check on that aspect. By increasing our evening hours, it's helped in that situation. We've also gone to weekend home visits or field visits, if you, or contacts where we're going to go out. It's not about an element of surprise. It's more about reminding them that they're being monitored, and if we can keep the community that much safer instead of being 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or 8 to 5, if we extend it to a Saturday or Sunday where we have a team of 4 or 5 POs go out and do some door knocks and some verification stuff, it's only going to increase the safety of the city of Lancaster and, of course, Palmdale, because it's regional. So I'll give you some data. Based on revocations and violations, we had 11. We have basically 396 currently assigned to AB 109. Some still are on bench warrant that have absconded or have not reported, very few, but we monitor about 400 cases out of this office here alone. That doesn't include parole or traditional probation, which is housed at the courthouse. This is specifically for AB 109. So we had 0 flash incarcerations last month, which is really good. Please understand that each of our officers are averaging 20 cases each. This is the way it was designed. We're designed to have small caseloads to pay attention to the details of each individual probationer. So when we have 5 or less flash incarcerations, which means we're going to put them in custody for 10 days to get them a wake-up call, if we don't have to do that, that helps. However, on the flip side, we did have the 11 violations. So sometimes we're going to skip the flash incarceration and give them a 10-day, hey, wake-up call, and we're going to just do the straight violation, which will hold them in custody for a maximum of 180 days, which is also 6 months. We had 30 warrants issued in the last month. 16 were recalled, and 12 were taken into custody. We've had 580 reporting visits to the office, which means that they're required, even though we only have 400 cases, some are required to do it 2 or 3 times. If we have a family violence person, or we have a narcotic user who's consistently showing struggles of performing the things he needs to do, or they're not going to mental health care, we're going to ask them to report more often. We're going to put them on a shorter arm. I keep them at an arm's length versus, so we try to be proactive in that aspect. But again, I brought some flyers for our resource fair. If anybody wants to come by and say hi, or even have an idea if someone wants to come and participate. And sometimes because of success that stays in the commission, most of you are business owners or people that are committed to this community, just to come by and shake their hand and treat them like they're normal. And if we can do that, then maybe they'll have a better chance. And then again, we'll have some victims there too, and maybe offer some services that maybe we're not aware of that we can use with the community. Thank you.
Brother,
go ahead.
We may have some questions. I have a couple as far as you mentioned the bench warrants. Mm-hmm. How many bench warrants have you out there right now?
We had 30 written for the month.
Okay, and those individuals, how many have been?
16.
16. Okay.
Have apprehended. 16.
Yeah. And where are they at?
They go into custody. Okay. And usually the sheriffs are really good about helping us out. It's been some good teamwork. They'll come out. There's certain times where we can take them and book them ourselves, but they've been very helpful. Their deputies out in the field at times when we've made a call, they've assisted us. There's some cases that most probation officers are not armed. So sometimes we may have somebody on PCP that's showing out of control behavior. There's something that maybe cause harm to someone, whether it be another person visiting or even a deputy probation officer who's trying to apprehend someone, and usually they'll come out and assist us. And in the past, they've been great. They've kept everything under control, which means that we have no incident.
So what happens to them after that point if
they go into
test
custody,
positive for PCP?
They'll go to court. They'll be violated. There'll be a violation report submitted to the courts down in the Los Angeles area, which handles all AB 109 cases. And again, their maximum is 180 days, which is 6 months. Many times when we have a situation that involves narcotics, we'll ask that they be released to the custody of a residential treatment and things of that nature. So we're going to try to find the right avenue. And hopefully by that, it may be detox. They may be having to be detox. Tarzana's works well with us and a few other agencies locally.
How many officers do you have?
At the moment, we have 24, I believe, actively in the community.
The ones that are still on the loose, they've been on the loose for how long? You can't find them anywhere. Obviously, I knew at one time housing was always an issue.
Housing is still an issue with females. Our last female housing was the victim of a flood. They're still trying to repair it. So now if we have a female that comes into custody or comes into our program and needs housing, the closest place is Pomona, which is ridiculous, in my opinion. It makes it very difficult to get that person help when we're going to take them away from maybe their support and family. I also know on the flip side, there's some other triggers that reside nearby and in the community that they know. But when we send somebody 80 miles away and they have nobody to know, they're going to turn to something that they do know, and that's usually returning back to drugs or some type of behavior, whether it be prostitution or whatever got them in custody in the first place. So by not having a female, and of course with females, it's more common to have children involved. So that makes it difficult. So we do offer them the homeless shelters and things of that nature, but they're reluctant. Some of them are victims of the system, in my opinion. We enable them. We give them money, we give them housing, we give them everything, and the next thing you know, they just say, why bother? Why go to work? Why do these things? So we have to keep reinventing the wheel with different programs to hopefully catch their attention, that maybe they can latch into something they'll enjoy doing and find out that they have some extreme talents.
The repeat offenders is usually drugs?
In this case, I think yes. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. We had a 70-year-old walk out of prison, came to our office. He's 70 years old. And I think we spoke about this when I spoke prior a few months ago. He comes in and he's testing positive for cocaine. He's 2 days out of custody, state prison. We don't know if state prison is testing them before they walk out.
What I understand from a report that was done a while ago, that's one of the issues.
It is still an issue.
Yeah,
because we're already starting on a negative foot. We're already in a hole. We have a guy showing up, a male or female, and they're under the influence. They're testing positive for cocaine. It's not like it's marijuana where everybody gives that a pass now, it seems like. But it's cocaine, highly addictive narcotic. And what do? Most time we can't. We're not going to turn around and send them back to prison. We're going to try to work with that person. But it's hard when you're starting. So I give a lot of credit to the probation officers that what we do is we do a written sanction along with a verbal sanction, and we document it and we send it down to a database. So if anybody picks up that file, regardless if it's anywhere in the county of LA, they know that that person has been notified that you are not to use drugs and that you failed to do that immediately when you walked out of state prison or county jail for that matter. But normally.
I was led to believe that even being released from state prison or county jail, they're not tested before they're released.
I don't believe they are.
Wow.
We had
it's kind of like okay, here you go. You've done your some time, and here you go, and you're still dirty before you get out.
Absolutely. And again, these are some of the frustrations that we deal with on a daily basis. I'm sure parole does too. But we do the best we can. And like I said, we have the beauty of the office we have up here. We have mental health, a co-locator, mental health, right in the same office building. We have Tarzana treatment where we can do an assessment, maybe get them into a detox center quickly if they show up, and things of that nature. We also have Health Right 360 that helps with employment and housing. So we have a full staff of people that are assisting us as co-locators that share our office. We have DPSS right there. If they need Medi-Cal, or if they need to reinstate their Medi-Cal, there's someone right there to help them out immediately. So we do everything we can in this program to get them on track so they don't have things. And we're located near the GR buildings and stuff like that.
If they're being released to you that way, makes your job 100% harder, doesn't it? As far as, they're being released to you, and here's another step for them. Why hasn't somebody or said something that to the state prisons or jails, or why aren't they being tested before they're released?
I think we can criticize a lot of things that happen in custody, but that would be a long bloody thing, and whoever it just. But I do believe this, that the probation officers and even the parole officers that do this type of work, we took it to make a difference, not to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do, and I think they're doing a great job. I think the city of Lancaster and Palmdale is benefiting from that. We can't get them all, but we do our best to keep them off the front page.
Oh, you're doing an incredible job. It's just, it makes it difficult on you guys. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And this is why we're doing
the system.
Yeah. And this is why we're doing the resource thing. We're trying to see if this will benefit the ones that feel like when they go to a resource fair at the college or someplace, they feel like maybe it's not for them. It's not designed for them. So we try to design this resource fair that's coming in May at our office in our parking lot. that is geared toward them, the ones that have had the struggles, the ones that have had been told no many times, or don't have the courage or the confidence to go and apply for a job because they feel that they were going to be told no right away. So we're hoping that by having this resource fair, that we're going to encourage them to step out of that negative box and maybe give it a shot. So again, if you know anybody hiring someone that wants to take a chance on a risk person that has demonstrated to our probation officers that would recommend them that they are capable, we'd like to hear from you, of course. So I have some flyers. I'll give them to Mr. DeRiccio, and he can share them with you after the meeting. So that if you want one, please take one and give us a call if you want to be a participant in it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'll give you.
Eric, Captain, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
Morning.
So I just want to start by thanking all of you. The city really stepped up and showed support, Vice Mayor and Mayor, when we lost Officer Jonathan Tanner recently to cancer. A lot of support at the service, and then a lot of offers of support from the Sheriff's Department helped us tremendously that day for the service, and then the boosters also assisted the family, so I appreciate that. I'll go through some of our stats here. So far this year, our fatal collisions are up significantly. Typically, by this time of the year, we only have 5. For 2016, 17, and 18, we had 5 at this point. This year, we're up to 9 already. So the pace is increased. Our total injury accidents are 188 so far this year. The 3-year average in general is 175, so we're up there as well. Property damage only collisions, we've had 271. The average is typically 258. And total accidents, 489, and the average is generally 438. DUI collisions, those are down by just slightly. We've had 30 so far. Generally, the average is 33. And DUI arrests are just about on pace with what we typically have. Average is 94. We're at 90 right now. We're not looking like we're going to be able to get more personnel anytime soon. The state motor vehicle account apparently is in trouble. That's what funds the Highway Patrol and the DMV. And the DMV's issues that they're having, I think, is taking away more funds and resources from that particular account. So our department's not even asking for any new positions anytime soon, so we're still hiring to keep up with attrition, but that's not adding any people to what we already have. I did make arrangements with our division office to get some grant overtime, and so we're going to have some officers from outside of our area coming from other areas to help us on a semi-regular basis to do some task force operations and try to hit the areas where we're seeing the most fatal collisions. We've already run the numbers and got the maps out and figured out where we're having the most issues with our fatal and injury collisions, and we're going to go after the primary collision factors that are most contributing to those types of collisions. So that'll be starting soon. We just submitted our ops plan, and I would think by next month we'd start having that on a pretty regular basis, that is extra assistance for enforcement. We continue to do our community outreach. We do our free Start Smart classes every month, sometimes twice a month. We do child car seat installations every week at our office, and then we have events throughout the year. Every 15 minutes programs. We just did one at Vasquez High School for teen DUI awareness. And we're going to be doing a tip-a-chip event tomorrow night at Claim Jumpers to help Special Olympics. That's going to be from 5 to 9 p.m. If any of you are interested, we'll be there. And that's all I have for you.
Okay, how many officers do you think you need up here as far as extra officers? I mean, you'd love to have as many as you like, but
yeah. Well, right now,
what do you figure?
We're down to 42 uniformed officers that are currently assigned to road patrol responsibilities. We have 7 additional that are doing other responsibilities. So yeah, we've lost officers to retirement. Obviously, we lost Officer Tanner. We lost some to transfers. And the last transfer list, we had 3 that left, but they only gave us 2 back. So just little things that in a smaller office like ours, it makes a huge, just 1 or 2 people makes a big difference. And then you typically have somebody on limited duty due to an injury. Throughout the year, you'll have 1 or 2 of those. So yeah, it just makes it tough to cover what we're doing. But I think the people we have are doing the best they can, and they are working really hard. We make sure that we hold them accountable. So the people we do have are doing everything they can to handle all of our many responsibilities that we have.
Well, appreciate everything you do. Yeah. Thank you.
Right,
Any questions? District Attorney's Office. Mr. Franklin's not here. Micah? Hi.
My name is Micah Piantanita. I'm the Assistant Head Deputy of the Antelope Valley branch of the DA's office. Mr. Sherwood is unavailable today, so he asked to speak.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. It's my first time here. My name is Micah Piantanita. I'm the Assistant Head Deputy of the Antelope Valley branch of the District Attorney's Office. Robert Sherwood is unavailable. He's out of the country, so he asked me to represent the office today. I just have a few very brief comments for you. I have some statistics for the month of March on our filings. For our misdemeanor filings and our felony filings, our numbers have increased from the last month. In February, we had 259 misdemeanor filings. That number increased pretty significantly. We went up to 324 misdemeanor filings. Our numbers for felonies also went up from February to March from 97 to 102 felony filings. The numbers, looking through the last year, they seem about average, although they have increased from the last month. I don't have really any statistics to explain the increase. We have a newer filing team. We're full staff in terms of our filing with 4 full-time filing DAs, which I think may help. They're able to review more cases and process them more quickly. But beyond our staffing, I don't really have an explanation for the increase in the filings. Do you have any questions for me?
Hopefully Mr. Sherwood's on a vacation.
He is.
Good. Good for him.
But it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you
She
as well.
is awesome.
Is she?
Yeah, she is.
Oh, thank you.
Any questions? No? Good. All right.
As I said to her earlier, I'm like, it's nice to see someone else that has a difficult last name to pronounce.
With Lee,
she kicks my butt on that one. No doubt.
Lee tried to have me go forward with it, and I said, there's no way.
Well, my maiden name was Young, so Piantanita was very difficult for me as well.
Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And hopefully Mr. Sherwood's having a great time. So, City Attorney's out.
Yeah, she's out. She's actually at a conference up in Sacramento.
Okay.
So she'll be back next month.
It's up to you, Mr. Dorico.
Okay, well, just a couple things that are kind of in line of all the discussion we're having in here today. Judge Estes came a couple meetings ago to talk about alternative sentencing court and how that has transitioned from being like a once-a-month court now to several days a week out of the month. But I want to give a shout-out to Director of Education Steve Radford, Adult Ed at Antelope Valley Union High School District, and Dr. Jill Zimmerman from Antelope Valley College. She's the Director of Student Services. We had a great meeting with Judge Estes and discussing all the potential educational opportunities and training for defendants out of the alternative sentencing court. And so just to remind you, the alternative sentencing court is related to veterans, diagnosed mental health defendants, as well as the drug court. So these are individuals that have been pulled out of the typical process through the judicial process based on their identified issues and brought into the alternative sentencing court for potential for diversion away. Those folks, I got to tell you, pretty impressive, immediately came up with a ton of ideas on how to move that process forward for Judge Estes, so I think some good things are going to be coming from that. Also, the things in line with diversion is working with Mr. Sherwood's office, as well as things that are going on with the 5th District and probation and diversion for youth. There's some things that are coming from that that are looking very promising for pre-filing diversion. So I think as things occur legislatively that we're all dealing with from a public safety standpoint, we have to be very creative and proactive on this diversion model, especially where it relates to our youth. The juvenile process now, with some changes with probation and the County Board of Supervisors, are pushing out that diversion out into community-based organizations. And of course, we in the city want to be a part of that discussion that's occurring in our community and what community-based organizations will be involved in that process. Also in line with that, because of the changes, the teen court as it existed with the support of Judge Wesley and the county has also changed. So you're going to see a process that we're putting together now to resurrect the Antelope Valley Community Youth Court, okay, to fill that gap. So while we've had 2 contract employees who have been working over at Antelope Valley High School with our youth diversion process for anti-truancy, I'm going to probably divert those individuals now. One of them will be assigned to the alternative sentencing court to coordinate with all the other outside entities with mental health or whatever service providers are out there that are currently working with Judge Estes, and the other individual is going to be responsible for resurrecting our Antelope Valley Community Youth Court for youth diversion. So those are things that are going to be developing, and as we develop those, I'd like to bring those forward to the commission to get your input as well, to see from the community side of things how we'd like to see that progress and what we believe the priority should be. So that's going to be a whole lot of things we're taking on along with developing this whole hybrid police model and all the things we're doing currently. Then some things I'm going to put out there because they're probably, as far as the community concerned, not everyone doesn't love parking enforcement officers, but I want to brag on our parking enforcement folks for a minute. Okay, we only have 4 parking enforcement folks, but in 2018, our parking enforcement people issued 31,906 citations for parking violations. And typically we warn people prior to that, so that's a significant number of contacts for them, for 4 individuals. And also in 2018, they towed 343 non-registered or illegally parked vehicle or abandoned vehicles, which is pretty significant. So that's a lot of vehicles out there that are not unregistered, uninsured, and out in our roadway. So far this year, they've written 19,975 citations and towed 111 cars already. So there's a significant number of vehicles that are out in our community that are either unregistered or abandoned out there. Also in line with that, some of the program things I talked earlier about the admin sites for petty thefts. You know, we're really partnering now with our large box stores and step that up with the help of the liaison deputies and our contract enforcement officers, and 63 citations just since March 6th. And those are between collaboration with Walmart, Winco, Target, and Costco. So as that program expands, there's a monetary penalty that's imposed there based on, instead of someone under Prop 47 getting 3 days jail credit for a 2-hour booking process at the station. So I think as we see that there's an impact there, I think we're going to see the same thing we saw with our party citations. You know, we've only issued since 2016 91 party citations, but the number of responses to large parties has reduced significantly just based on those 91 citations. So there's a significant monetary penalty associated with that, and for especially as the increasing cost of contract items, you can see that there's a benefit to not having that response. And I believe with the reorganization that the captain's done, as well as some of this impact, taking the deputies off of dealing with some of these issues where through the whole process are going to be diverted anyway. What's the outcome is having those deputies focus on the more impactful criminal behavior that's occurring in the community is having a positive effect. And I think those things all together, the more things we can be proactive on an intervention mindset, especially as it relates to mental health, addiction, our veterans, those type of things, we're going to see those positive outcomes. So hopefully we just keep riding that wave. The other thing I want to throw out there, this is an interesting thing that, and I'll have Tracy come up in a minute, but showed me this morning because I didn't realize. Here's all the letters of agencies for vacant property in our city that we've received from community members who want us to take a proactive approach to dealing with encampments on their properties. I don't know the exact number, what that represents, but that's a pretty significant file right there. Each one of those is one page of a letter of agency authorizing the city and law enforcement to make contact on their properties based on those issues. And that's all, again, I want to reiterate, is a proactive, a complaint-based process. Okay, so we aren't actively going out and seeking and fostering that relationship with property owners. That is based on complaints of things that are occurring on their property, whether it be illegal dumping, homelessness, other drug activity, whatever may be occurring on that vacant property where they've went ahead and given authorization on a preemptive model for us to go ahead and enforce on that private property. But I think that's a significant tell of where our community is on dealing with these issues in our vacant property. And that obviously has a nexus and effect to our occupied property in our community. So, I mean, I just thought that was an eye-opener for me as well. And then lastly, I want to bring Tracy up to talk about Poppy Festival. Tracy coordinates our public safety zone, and I bring her up every year to talk about this. She does a fantastic job.
Good morning, Chairman Little and Commissioners. Poppy Festival is 2 weeks away, April 27th and April 28th. We're actually excited and looking forward to it this year. The vendor list that I have for our safety zone, this year we have Antelope Valley Mosquito and Vector Control, American Red Cross, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CERT, California Highway Patrol, Damsel in Defense, Help for Heroes, the Jacob Hefter Foundation, Lancaster Animal Care Center. We're going to get some dogs and cats adopted. LA County Department of Mental Health, LA County Fire, LA County Public Health, LA County Sheriff Department, as well as their mounted posse this year from Palmdale. Los Angeles North Recruiting Company, that is the United States Army Recruitment, Office of Emergency Management from Edwards. Palmdale Animal Care Center, Paving the Way, Ready Lancaster, Red, White, and Blue, Sexual Assault Awareness LLC, SoCal Gas, Spiral Technology, Tarzana Treatment Center, and the U.S. Marines Recruiting Unit. So we're excited to have these folks this year. Any questions?
Is there a guaranteed good weather?
I can't guarantee that. I'm hoping for great weather this year. No wind. That would be excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tracy. I encourage it. Tracy does a great job getting those folks out there. And as you know, the Poppy Festival, of all the events we do, I think I enjoy that one the most, even from a staff level. We're always happy to be out there. Let's hope the poppies don't get blown away before, too, as well. They came out pretty early. But on a last note, I want to throw a shout-out to Captain Weber and his deputies. The deputies in the last year have served 15 search warrants at internet cafes. And it's an interesting phenomenon out there that we're having, but we have folks that are going out and they're opening a quote-unquote internet cafe that actually becomes a gambling location. And so far, in the last year, they've impounded and recovered over almost $300,000 worth of gaming machines and computers and monitors and everything as well that go down to central property. But I think what's significant about that is in the areas that the deputies have targeted, along with our contract enforcement guys, that we have seen an impact in that area when we discover them of thefts that are occurring, whether it be vehicle burglaries or petty thefts in the area, and for the individuals that are participating in this. And as they close these down, you can see a reduction in that area of those same events. But that's pretty significant if you think about that, 15 of them. And they're constantly, these things are popping up. But it must be very lucrative because, I'm not kidding, just the gaming machines themselves, $7,000 to $10,000, and Captain Weber has them stacked as high as the roof at the station out there in the outside evidence locker. So pretty an interesting situation we have there. Some things we're discussing right now, so maybe some different tactics as we manage this issue out there, but it's becoming a much larger problem, large-scale problem that we'll address and bring that number to you.
Do we have a number of how many of them are here that are still operational, or are they?
As they come up, we address them. And
right
again, as many as we address, it's like we're chasing them. Okay, so again, that's where I bring up the point. It must be significantly lucrative because based on the seizure alone of property, that's a big number. Okay, so for that to continue. So Major Crimes has been involved in some of that discussion. They're looking at some locations that are community-wide, just not in Lancaster. I mean, this is an Antelope Valley issue, and I'm sure it's way beyond just the Antelope Valley. What it's one group or whatever it may be, they're working that currently. So as we move forward, I'll be bringing those numbers out to you.
It sure seems like that property owners should do their homework too also, as far as the landlords of those buildings and this and that and everything else.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion to have with like GAVAR and maybe some presentations, and that's what we've been talking about.
Many times.
And I've reached out to GAVAR as far as having that conversation possibly in May at one of your meetings in that month, and then working closely with the landlord-tenant issue for commercial property. And of course, I think that makes sense for us to work with you, Chairman Little, on that as far as your outreach for that. But we definitely got to get some education out there as far as for the property owners.
I don't know how many times I've called you and said,
Yeah. Exactly. And again, what I appreciate is the guys will go out there. Our folks will stay after late hours. The city vehicles, our Parks and Rec staff or Public Works will provide us vehicles and stick around, and we'll get these things handled. And so we're just going to keep attacking them. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lee. Any questions for Mr. Lackey's office? Assemblyman Lackey's office, how are you?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here with a brief legislative update on a couple of things that are going on in Sacramento. As you may know, the legislative session is ramping up and a lot of bills are starting to get heard in committee. The first bill that I'd like to speak on is AB 392, known as a deadly force bill. Yesterday was heard in the Public Safety Committee. Assemblyman Lackey is the vice chair of that committee. The bill passed 5 votes in favor and 2 in opposition. Assemblyman Lackey voted in opposition to this bill. And essentially what this bill, introduced by Assemblymember Weber, would try to do is make it so that law enforcement would only have to use deadly force when necessary, in opposition to when reasonable, which is the current standard. Assemblyman Lackey, through his 30 years of experience as a CHP officer, believes that this bill will essentially lead to the deaths of cops. I'm going to quote him here. He said, "California cops will die if this bill becomes law." No question. This bill did pass Public Safety Committee yesterday. There was hundreds of individuals that were there in support of the bill, and most of the opposition of the bill was on behalf of organizations that represent law enforcement. The bill will now be going to Assembly Rules, but that bill, Assemblyman Lackey, since the beginning of that legislation, when it was introduced, he was in strong opposition, and he's going to continue to do so. But that's just an update on AB 392. In addition to that, the last Crime Commission meeting, Vanessa had mentioned how Assemblyman Lackey took the lead as the Vice Chair of Public Safety in response to the death penalty decision that the Governor has just announced. In response to that, Assemblyman Lackey introduced AB 580. This bill is in response to the Governor's moratorium on the death penalty, and the bill will do 3 things. It would increase the period of how long the Governor has to wait before commutating an inmate's death sentence. It would prohibit the governor from doing a blanket commutation and will require the governor to look into each case individually. And it allows for the victims' families to request a hearing before the Board of Parole hearings to present a case as to why the inmate should remain on death row. The Board of Parole hearing shall provide a recommendation to the governor on whether or not to approve the application for commutation. And this bill in specific is being sponsored by the Chief Probation Officers, and it is currently in the Public Safety Committee awaiting a hearing. Another bill that was heard yesterday in committee was AB 1450. This is a bill that Assemblyman Malarkey introduced, and we have titled it as Gabriel's Law. Essentially, this bill would create an electronic database for real-time sharing between different state agencies to try to prevent tragedies such as the ones we had locally here with Gabriel and Anthony Avalos. Essentially, this bill was put forth in committee yesterday. We had a strong coalition of district support, individuals who had gone through different scenarios here with DCFS, and this bill yesterday was heard. It was on recommendation by the chair. It is going to be given consideration for reconsideration. The chair explained that he would like to work with Assemblyman Malarkey to try to come up with a solution to try to prevent those tragedies. So essentially, the bill is not dead, as you may call it, but it's essentially going to be reconsidered and going to be worked on all year to try to come up with that solution. Something interesting from that was that the chair of public safety, he did essentially extend a promise to our constituents, our support group here, to work closely with Assemblyman Malarkey and the opposition to the bill to ensure that something can be done to try to prevent those tragedies here in not only Los Angeles but statewide. In addition to that, the bills are starting to ramp up in the committee process. So if there's any bills that you might want further details on, please feel free to get in contact with Assemblyman Malarkey's legislative director. I'd also like to announce two upcoming events that Assemblyman Malarkey will be hosting. On April 27th, Assemblyman Malarkey will be hosting a transitional conference for individuals with disabilities. Essentially, this event is targeted towards high school individuals who are graduating and transitioning into the workforce. So it provides different resources for them to be better equipped and better prepared to move forward with more opportunities to gain employment. In addition to that, on May 11th, Assemblyman Malarkey and Senator Scott Wilk will be having a community coffee in the city of Lancaster, and that's going to be May 11th at the AVTA, and that's going to be at 9 o'clock. And those are two upcoming events that we have. And is there any questions?
Drew? Yeah, I had a question. Can you speak to the status on the getting rid of the monetary bail system in California? I understand there's an effort to take it to the ballot. And
yes. If you could. Yes. So SB 10, which would eliminate cash bail, is currently on hold, and this is a new development, and this is because they have just gathered enough signatures to be able to put that on the referendum for the 2020 ballot. So that is on hold. They did just get enough signatures to get that on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
With respect to the bill that you mentioned, the first bill, changing the requisite standard to necessary in the use of force, what lens is that? Was there a discussion about, is that with hindsight or with foresight? You understand my question?
I think that's the tricky part of it. I think for Assemblyman Malarkey, his argument is, that's a split second decision whether an officer has to use that type of deadly force, and he strongly feels that adding an element can create tragedies that will essentially affect our California law enforcement officials. I can go ahead and get back to you on that question, but it's that split-second decision that is really allowing Assemblyman Lackey not to be in favor of this bill.
Captain, would you? What's your thought process?
Well, unfortunately, or I shouldn't say that. Fortunately, the police department doesn't make the laws. That's the way our country is set up. So we'll, of course, abide with whatever laws are in place. But the current standard of objectively reasonable is through the Graham versus Connor decision from the late 80s. That's the Supreme Court law of the land. I don't know how this would play out when you try to do state legislation that overrules a Supreme Court ruling. So I suspect that it would end up in litigation. Certainly, how it would play out, I don't know. But the way I explain it, I get asked this a lot at different community events. And the reason it's reasonable, if you read the case, is you have to look. You can't look at it as hindsight. You have to look at it as, is it reasonable at the time? Like, for instance, this is an example I use all the time. You pull a gun on me right now from right there. You pull out a handgun on me, and I pull my handgun out, and I have to use deadly force and shoot you. Would we say that's necessary? I think everyone would say, yes, it is. But now, a half hour from now, we start doing the crime scene, and it turns out that it's a replica gun. It's an airsoft gun. Well, was it necessary? Well, in hindsight, it wasn't necessary because it was a toy gun, but how could you possibly know that at the time? And that's the really dangerous part, in my opinion, as to going from a reasonable to a necessary. And that's a great question. What is the lens of necessary? I think that's a danger in the law, and that's something that certainly needs to be looked at thoroughly. But like I said, we're the executive branch, not the legislative branch, so right. Other folks make the laws, other folks interpret them, and we will obviously abide by whatever the law of the land is.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're at the end of our program here. So from public business from the floor on non-agendized items, individuals are able to address the Criminal Justice Commission on items that are not on the agenda. Speaker cards are at the back and up front. You are limited to 3 minutes. We cannot take action or anything else, but we're able to listen and hopefully make direction. So anyways, we have a speaker card, Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, good morning. It's always so refreshing to come here and see all the good work. It helps restore my sanity. And I heard Mr. DeRico and the Captain talk about a lot of positive things, and that alternative sentencing thing is incredible, and the youth diversion, all that stuff. And my question, which I can ask you later, is about the Antelope Valley, the County Commission on Homelessness and the diversion subcommittee that I'm assigned to. I don't know how these two groups can get together and work together, but that would be a great thing to know who's coming in and who's providing them services on your end and how we can help. The Night to Shine, that's incredible. I mean, all these events that you go to, they really help build community cohesion and put a face on law enforcement that I think is so important. And I want to recommend, I just started it last night. Netflix has The Highwayman. It's got Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, and they're kind of like over-the-hill lawmen that are still trying to do stuff, and you can probably relate to that, Mr. DeRico. Your mind's still there, but the body doesn't do what you want, and it gets hard. But the insights, the awareness that you all bring to solving these problems, that's what's incredible, and that's what comes from experiences, is the ability to adapt and change and do things. And probation, that was all great. I mean, I appreciated you telling me how hard you all work, and I know that's true, and everybody's in here to make a difference, and we keep fighting on. So just, again, I stand in appreciation of all of you, and let's keep up this great community effort. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
I'd like to personally thank Mr. Paul for not adding me to the Over the Hill Lawmen group. Thanks, Dave.
You want to come back up, David? Thank you, David. Thanks, Captain. Thanks, Lee. Commissioner comments, anything? Then we will stand. Go ahead.
I have a question in regards to this presentation, but let me get back on quick, because I don't want to be an idiot.
We're good. So, no commissioner comments? Then we'll stand adjourned until May 8th at 10 a.m. Thank you.